Welcome, everybody. We're doing a live from Madison, Wisconsin with Ricard Calvadio and Ethan Indigo. How's it going, guys? Tell them what you've been up to.
Go ahead, Ethan.
Well, I'm so jealous that you guys are meeting in person because that's always so powerful. And not necessarily envious, but just stoked for both of you at the same time. Let's see. I've been writing the 540 article and getting that together. Headless, you'll be stoked when I finish it, and hopefully Ricardo and others as well. And I did a really cool discussion last week with another occult reject, Brandon Lee, Magus in the media, when we talked pretty, I think, in an inspirational manner about Tai Chi mainly. Yeah, and looking forward to hopefully getting back on the occult rejects more frequently anyway. Again, stoked that you guys are meeting together. That's awesome.
Very cool. I can kind of see the comments down here, but I can't really click on them every 5 minutes. So if you guys are leaving comments, thank you so much. I won't be able to get to them. But we did a great interview the other day with the guy who does the X Files stuff, Secret Sun blog.
That was
And
cool.
so it was a good interview. I think a lot of people kind of understand that there's a narrative language that is going on with stuff like the X Files that are highly influential in the world that we got going on today. So I think once people can kind of understand and process what they're seeing a little bit better on the X Files, they can kind of understand where we're going as a society with this whole church of the national security state that they kind of introduced. So I think
Hmm.
understanding the X Files a little bit better and what Chris Carter was going for with his visions there would be very beneficial. So check those out. What you been working on?
Well, I've been working with Ancient Earthwork Society and with James Shears, so trying to preserve his work, and I'm helping the organization as best as I can while I'm here, so, and learning a lot. So, because being around these people is always, that there is this saying that the devil doesn't know much because it's the devil. The devil knows much because he's very old. So.
Hmm.
You just imagine what we would be if we had 200, 300,000 years to keep absorbing information. So it's even in poverty is a power on itself. So
Great. There's not much you're going to miss in that amount of time. And what's really interesting about Madison is they've got some of the most interesting mounds. These are effigy mounds down here. So they've got thousands all over the state, but particularly they are grouped around Madison, Wisconsin. You've got elk effigy mounds, you've got bear effigy mounds. There's lots of different varieties, but whatever the ancients were leaving, they were definitely interested in making it big and making it visible. And so the effigy mounds around this area are really fascinating to me. What are some of the discoveries you've come across in your study of them?
so here I started because I came just before the equinox. And so I started to go just across the lake where we are. There is this bear effigy mound, and next to it, it's a seating stone. So when you sit on that sitting stone just by the bear mound, you look at a stone in the distance in the highest point of that hill, and that's exactly where the sun comes up. So
Very cool.
it's no coincidence, right?
Right.
So and where we are, I hope we have the time. So right in that direction starts. There is a sacred place called the Spirit Rock that just looks just like you'll see. It just looks like just a frog, and that's where the frogs come first. But that stone is not natural to there, so it's a massive multi-ton stone that the indigenous people brought from afar, maybe 20, 30 miles um, into here, and it marks a long distance alignment that is hundreds of miles long. So it goes all the way here up to Wisconsin Rapids. I think that's how it's called, more or less. There's a site near that area that has a whale, a snake, a six-sided mound. Um, you have the whale like this, and then you have the snake in the middle coming down, and then you have the hexagonal mound, all in the middle of a marsh, and that's the eighth node. I think that's the work that James is writing now. It's going to be its next book, and this is the fascinating thing. For those that saw the interview that we did yesterday on the Roundtable Chronicles that you can watch on the Institute for Natural Philosophy channel, we had Lee Pennington and we had James Shears. And these people, no matter how advanced in age they are doing more than we see young people or middle-aged people interested in doing anything. They are still launching documentaries. They're still writing books. They're still doing research. They're trying to learn every single day something, right? So they are still engaged after all these years. The story that you go old and uninterested and you don't want to do nothing, you just want to sit down and watch a telenovela or something like that.
Right.
It's not true. You can pursue knowledge all your life, and that's what these people are doing. And that's why they are fascinating. So Lee visited more than 100 countries. He has wrote is the highest award in literature. He has had it multiple times. He has written Broadway pieces. He has written documentaries. He has written um, what do you call novels, not only poetry but also novels. And James has documented all this that you're talking about, these effigy mounds. He has documented more than 800 to 1,000 of them. With the product of that is thousands of maps that are beautiful, beautiful. I cannot share them here. They will be public soon, but I will show you a few examples that I have reduced.
Awesome.
They are absolutely magnificent. It's like a Da Vinci work because the letters are perfect, all straightened up. So it's the drawings of what you see there with explanations and the alignments and all the things that caused him to, when he was a teacher, he's a emeritus professor from the University of Wisconsin, and because his students were finding sacred geometry in the how the mounds and the effigies work together, they were sued. They had to take the sacred geometry off the maps, or they would sue them for putting things that the indigenous people couldn't have because this is dumb people. Okay, they made some animal drawings on the floor to bury the dead. Yes, but that's it. There's no meaning. There's no nothing, right? And as they were explaining yesterday, there are sites in here that they documented that are you are talking about it. They are universities. There are several levels to their teaching, to their initiations, to their explanation of these relationships, right? So it's incredible to see because you go to these places, and I hope we have the time to show you around here, and we can't see much unless someone did the job that he did, that him and his students surveying this from top down using true north and not a compass north, because he referred that yesterday. It's important because the compass north started in Canada 200 years ago when we started recording it. It's now in Siberia. So if you are taking measures of a site today, they will be completely incorrect. So he used true north. He used ancient methods to detect the true north. Uh, and his work is invaluable on and what I'm trying to say is we can't see much, right? You see the
Right.
mounds, but you can't see the birds, for instance, because they're too big.
Right.
Unless you're looking from above, you can see it, right? And I was with Richie Brown in right in this place. See, look how much effigies are just in this strip of land,
Mm.
and we're looking at the equinox, and then the it's native land, so they built a fire pit, and the closer group of people then came down and stayed by the fire during the night. The coyotes were owling in the distance, and Richie Brown was telling stories until he got to the end, and he was explaining this and saying, and you can only see them from above. And so, and people asked from the circle, people asked, so if it was seen from above, is who was seeing them, right? And he says, well, aliens. So there is this now. Apparently, there is this uh, group of native people that are starting to bring some kind of disclosure, what they call the star people, right? And that's one of the explanations they have for their own culture and tradition, which to me was very surprising because I don't think it's needed. But I think the gods are a better explanation than UFOs. But they are not clear in what they are saying, so as they like to be, and so they might just be meaning higher beings or spirits.
Well, we're living in an era now where the gods and the UFOs have kind of become this sort of enmeshed ideal together. You know, I mean, the chariots of the gods and all the rest of these concepts from, you know, oh, the Sumerians, they were god and UFOs and they were gods and aliens. I think what they're really demonstrating is their lack of a grasp on the actual spiritual principles at play there. But the thing that stands out to me is this whale mound.
Hmm.
I mean, your work focuses a lot on this, you know, the trade of the Bronze Age coming from the copper in this area. And they've got images of whales showing that they had a connection with the ocean.
Yes.
And anywhere, you know, Canaanite Phoenicians would go, what they would do is they would contract the local people to do the work for them. So that this is how their trading networks went. This is how their mythology would go, is they would have that connection with the local people that, you know, they would basically, you know, trade with them to take the resources. They weren't.
If I tell you that these alignments are used with the nautical mile and not the land mile.
There you go.
These were people of the sea. They were using the same technologies that they used to navigate through the stars. They were using on land to create these structures and the distance between them and the orientation and all the alignments. So it's all related to the sea. Even in here, that we are in the middle of the top of the North American continent, right? They had a close relation to that. And then you go to places like Cahokia, and they were receiving materials on that site from all over, including South America, right? From any corner of the American continent. These people, they were not static in one place, as we are led to believe. They had vast networks of trade, even if we don't consider the copper and the mining. So
Right.
they were not butt flap people that were just hunting prey and eating and nothing more.
They're not the butt flap people that we are today.
No.
Isn't that interesting? I think
I wonder, Ricardo, there's another maybe pursuit of biological history of agricultural plants that might have traces of this idea of North America being connected prior to what they tell us. And again, it's probably a lot of it, you know, is influenced by whatever, quote unquote, the mainstream. But it's an interesting maybe point of study, or might have some ideas about, you know, who was sharing what, where, type of thing.
Well, go ahead.
It's interesting about these mounds. They have specific types of species growing around them, specifically cultivated for that purpose. So, yeah, if there is that cross pollination between different continents, this is the place where
I
you
know
would
that it's one stream of study where they try to find the connections between Asia and Europe by way of the plant biology and history. But I don't know if they've done it by way of the Americas, but might be interesting to find out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's that spiritual connection that I think a lot of people just pass over. As you know, these are just shapes in the ground. There's more to it than that, right? These are more like spiritual energies, right? So a lot of people miss out on the fact that all of these animals are highly representative of certain types of energies and certain types of connections that are far more deep and valuable than people give them credit for. These are hieroglyphs in the earth, right? That's one of the main purposes, is to convey that knowledge, that information, and that spirit to future generations. And unless you can really feel it and tap into that spirit, are you getting the full picture? And unfortunately, I think that is not the case.
I
And
definitely
because
agree.
these are monolithic communication devices, essentially, right? They are so big that they were unable to be destroyed. Think of everything else that they purposefully dismantled, mounds included, notoriously, but so many other things that we don't know about.
Well, it seems to me that the places where there aren't mounds in Wisconsin are usually the places that have had destroyed mounds, and they just didn't get to them first.
Interesting.
Oh,
But
they
Wow.
destroyed. There was tens of thousands. Right?
And it would have
So,
been just a matter of like the intention of the farmer that bought the land. They weren't even thinking about, maybe I'm postulating it possible anyway, that they weren't even thinking about destruction of any evidence as much as, oh yeah, we just get rid of these to make the field flat.
or maybe they didn't even see them because you can see them from above, but can you see them on the ground? Right. So, I mean, there's a
Right.
definite
It's just a
linkage
little.
with Peru and the Nazca Plain and the idea of these geoglyphs. I mean, that's they're doing geoglyphs up here, they're doing them down in Nazca. It's a much more highly connected world than people gave it credit for. And basically, when they have to sue people to get rid of evidence, they're hiding stuff. I mean, what it is, or whether they even have the knowledge to be able to talk about it in a very succinct way, kind of eludes them, and but I think that there is a change in the whole dialectic now that we're going into a whole new era, of understanding, because I think the elites of the research community are doing that important work. And maybe that's the thing that's going to change these things around, is because now we've got the tools, and those tools are going to be valuable in the future in really actually digging in and trying to get to the bottom of these ancient mysteries.
well, and Ethan, you're talking about the things that might be found. Is Vince Barrows now is trying to find out the age. So we already contacted the museum, and they already said that in the next board meeting they will discuss if they allow us to do the testing. And they have silkworm cocoons.
Right. Right. You mentioned. So he was
Yeah.
mentioning that.
So, and trees that feed those animals. And yesterday he showed a bronze
Crazy.
effigy totem in the shape of a silkworm with the six
Hmm.
legs and the false legs inside and right characteristics in the top. So, and there is the indigenous people say they came here. The facts show they came here. Only academics don't. The Chinese here never. Never, never before Columbus. No, 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 no. But all the evidence points into it. And that's what we were discussing yesterday, that these people don't follow the scientific method because they don't want to be proven wrong, which to me is completely idiotic because it's a pleasure to be a scientist in the sense that you are constantly being proven wrong. That's how you advance the science and your knowledge of things, right? The fact that it has been correct for 100 years, it doesn't mean that you don't find something after that contradicts all you found before. Look at what we're doing in deep space. Every time we look deeper into space, they find things that contradict everything in physics, right? So,
They found galaxies that are older than the Big Bang.
It's
Or
really interesting that these both of these resources, copper and silk, were notoriously, even though they may argue if they're found in the Americas right now, they were both acceptably in accepted to be notoriously scoundrel-like resources, where the silk was like hidden how it was obtained for centuries, right? It was like the thing that kept
state
the
secrets.
resource. It was the biggest state secret for centuries of the area. And same with copper, we can deduce, and other mining materials, of course. But so it's interesting they both work that way.
Yeah.
Worked.
And it increases the value. It's not only to secure the
Yeah.
market, but increases the
Yeah.
value. The fact that it's kind of
Of
magical
course.
thing and how it is made, because it's different of all other cloth materials that were available. Right. So it's like when the Carthaginians they had the purple or the blue. I can't
The
remember. The
purple,
purple.
purple, very closely held state secret of the color purple. And
Right.
so it wasn't known until much later that it was coming from these, you know,
Seashells. Right?
it was coming from these snails that are cannibalistic. And it's funny because that's kind of a reflection of the people who took that purple for themselves. They were
Parasitic arbitrage, as you brought up last week, right?
there. You go, yeah, parasitic
And
arbitrage.
they're all very classic examples of how the government is really defined as, and does all the time, control the mind. Not only is it controlling resources for the oligarchy, but that is the local oligarchy, whatever it may be, but it's also govern the mente. Like it's the whole process.
The question is, who is controlling the government? Because the government is the visible face
Right.
of the conspiracy, right?
It's the visible face and the kakistocracy. They're picking the worst people to manage us, not the best. So who's the people behind the throne?
Do you think
And it's
that
the demos.
do you think that the answer provided by David Icke is acceptable?
Well, I don't know if it's lizard people, but I think it probably goes to maybe an invisible war. I mean, you've got these gods that bring knowledge, and then you've got the gods that take knowledge away. And it's not immediately apparent to the people looking in
How
to really figure out who's who.
we may be on the precipice of one of the most, amazing paradigms right now, with the release of alien files too, right? No, I mean, who knows? I mean, I speculate if much of it's going to be valuable, but who knows, like, what paradigm information is going to be dropped.
Right. Well, again, is this all a big distraction? I mean, UFOs, the way that they want to present them doesn't seem to be very profitable thus far. But how many more grifters need to be cycled through the congressional hearings for there to be a total give up on the disclosure process? But I don't think there's going to be disclosure through the government. It just doesn't seem to be the way that they operate.
I wonder if the people that are looking today so obsessively to UFOs are not too focused in the present, in the recent past, because you have representations of objects for hundreds, if not thousands of years going back, right? And I'm not even going to Tassili caves where you have those beings with the helmet and the spikes on top of it. That can be easily explained by psychedelics, but it can also be something else. Uh, but these things are not new, especially the orbs, right? And we had what is it called? The factious fire. Help me on this because I can't remember the
I'm not
factus
sure.
factus fire. That this is comes a lot in alchemy. So that there is this. Jack Lantern.
Oh, right, yeah. So that's a common theme. They also call it the swamp gas, right? But there's lots of different iterations of this. I think one of Will o' the Wisp
Yes.
is also associated with it, and I think it's funny because it's commonly associated with swamps, and the idea of the swamp is like the blending of the water with the land. Also, interesting harmonics coming from frogs. If you sit there and you zone out in front of a swamp, the frog song can actually bring you into an altered state of mind. So I think the swamp gas, the conscious energy, and then will o' the wisps, it all sort of points to a changing in landscape causes a change in consciousness. But that could go into exactly whatever this stuff is, some kind of conscious energy.
If you remember, people probably didn't relate this, but those that read or know Tolkien, when they're crossing the marsh of the dead, what does Gollum say to them? Don't follow the lights, right?
Right.
And it's these legends that you are walking at night, especially in this kind of wetlands, and if you see a light, the legends say clearly, don't follow it because it will lead you to a path where you won't return. But are these the orbs that we listen so much? Are and now it's more common because we have cell phones, because we have more people around. I don't know how to explain it, but the thing that I'm trying to say is I don't think this is a modern thing. If the aliens are real, they didn't came now or in 40 years. These things have been happening for much longer, thousands of years. There's images of this kinds of stuff in caves, so it's not something
It's,
new.
it's possible that there's things going on too, right? That there are, in fact, UFOs or whatever, if you will, that have been here for thousands of years. And it would appear that there is a new phenomenon because every time they talk about it in relation to the last 80 years. And what is synchronized with the last or beginning with the last 80 years? The beginning of nuclear detonations, which possibly a lot of people say was essentially like I think this is a possibility myself, a ping throughout the universe that said, "Hey, we're here," and may have instigated a new kind of group or new visitation cycle. Because there are anecdotes too. I was going to say from Tibet and visitors, some being gurus well versed in Tibetan Buddhism, and some being other visitors where they'll see numerous orbs or lights in the sky. And on asking the locals, they say, we don't know what that is, but they do come and go out of the mountains, it would seem. And we have no idea what they are, but they've been here for a long time, type of thing.
Well,
And those are anecdotal and just who knows, but
who's dangling the lights in front of our eyes? It's the government and the disclosure. They're like, follow the lights. So is that something we come back from, or are we going to get distracted by that? Because I think that's what they're here to do. I mean,
You remember 2 years ago, UFO disclosure. It's now. It's now. It's happening. 1 year later, it's now. It's happening. I've been hearing this for 30 years. It's
decades,
always
yeah,
this is
sure.
always the year. This is the year that we're going to get the UFO disclosure, right? But if I tell you, and he's watching what I'm saying, you know what that is? This is a construction built by indigenous people that represents each one of these is a precise star in the Milky Way. This is the moon, and this is the Crab Nebula, right? This is Orion. You don't see whole of Orion, right? So
Wait,
tell
are
me
you
how.
are you sharing something? Because I don't
No, I
see it
can't.
if
I
you're
can't
sharing.
share it. I can't share
Oh,
it. I'm
gotcha,
sorry.
gotcha. That's okay.
it's
Sorry.
a joke.
So, but how did they
National
knew?
security.
How did they knew all of these things? How did they knew the exact position of the star? It's not one or two stars; it's hundreds of them. They have the Crab Nebula explosion encoded in this site.
It's interesting. The predominant mainstream presentation of how people peopled the Americas is that they came over from Asia over the Bering Strait. The Book of the Hopi says that they came over from the south and migrated north from South America. So who knows? Maybe there were two migrations, or maybe one is right, one is wrong. I don't know.
I
This
think
makes
there
me
were
think of that.
multiple
Sure.
migrations.
Yeah.
And I think the when they ask when you ask a Hopi, where are the Anasazi today?
Hmm.
They're like, we're right here, standing right in front of you. So it's funny because we're always trying to make these distinctions when maybe the distinctions aren't even there. So I think that's a big problem with academia too, is that they're making artificial distinctions on this stuff that probably don't exist. And looking around and actually finding more evidence, you might get sued when you do that.
You see the
I
size of
was
the parking lot.
one of the first things you brought up, Headless, or just
Right
mentioned
here.
as we. Oh, whoops.
Go on,
I was
Ethan.
going to say you mentioned the totalitarianism. Essentially, you didn't use that term, but and then we've also been talking about the government resource and mind control. I had a video from it looks like TikTok/Reddit. Will that be okay to play? Is that a bannable thing? Will it mess
It's
us up
fine.
or what?
No, I don't think that's a
It should be
problem at
fun.
all. The only thing that
Okay.
YouTube doesn't like is when you play site or videos from their own site. So when you play videos from their own site and promote
Okay.
other videos that
Let's.
are on their platform, they get angry with you. But if you do it from other platforms, you're perfectly fine.
It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but that's okay.
Right.
Especially
Don't
when they ask, like, whenever you make a video, do you want this to be able to be shared by others or not? And
right.
so some videos that you'd think would be okay with it. So uh, interesting thing happened last night, apparently, and who is more studied than it about it rather than I made this cool video. Um, so here
Sure,
we
let's
go.
see it. Do you got it shared? Oh, there we go.
very
Yeah,
early
is it
hours,
gone?
there
12:45
we go.
a.m. East Coast time to be specific, as I'm making this video. And this breaking news is something you need to see, you need to hear, and you need to pass forward. Donald Trump's stormtroopers are here. Really, Stephen Miller's and the Heritage Foundations and everyone else's. What this is the Homeland Security Task Force website, and it was just recently published within the last 24 hours to the internet. To see it, you will need to visit hstf.gov. And there you can see in bold print, no mistakes. We don't negotiate, we dismantle with this very dystopian AI type of propaganda. To be clear, this is not ICE. This is not one singular agency. This is a multiple agency, local, state, and federal level force, meaning Donald Trump's regime has quite literally created, as I mentioned, stormtroopers, or if you're into the Hunger Games, peacekeepers. These are people that will be on our streets no matter what city or county or town or borough you live in. So, if we go back through the entirety of that executive order, we find a number of unconstitutional moves by this regime, which is not a surprise, but it's something to know about. Number one, they are going to not just suggest, but now require that all individuals in the country without documentation register themselves. Remember that app that came out last year? They want them to register themselves and they will be asked self incriminating questions. It says outright that they're going to eliminate all the documents they need to deport someone. Due process is over. And this executive order directly calls out other executive orders as part of the plan. Here's a number of them, which, by the way, includes this one, which was strengthening and unleashing America's law enforcement to pursue criminals and protect innocent citizens. And yeah, according to that executive order, which links to the other one, which then links back to the website, do you see how they kind of piece everything? So it's a puzzle you have to put together on your own. According to that, we see that they are asking for military assets to be used in towns like yours and mine, including but not limited to military and national security assets training non lethal capabilities and personnel can most effectively be utilized to prevent crime. Non lethal weapons just being used on our streets. Oh, and if you're on the right side of history and a law enforcement officer, they're going to try and use this section, holding state and local officials accountable, as a way to literally, federally, criminally charge you. They want anyone who is willfully and unlawfully directing the obstruction of criminal law, their criminal law, Trump criminal law, including by directly and unlawfully prohibiting law enforcement officers from carrying out duties necessary for public safety and law enforcement, or unlawfully engaging in discrimination or civil rights violations under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that restrict law enforcement
Almost done.
activities and endanger citizens. This is illegal. It is unconstitutional. It will make our law enforcement officers at the state and local levels either comply or be charged criminally. This is the makings of something that looks like a civil war. This is the makings of not just
All right, she's gotten a little hyperbolic with that, but let's see, one more thing I'd like to share. This is a lot of people talk about how Trump came onto the scene 10 years ago. Well, he ran for president in the 90s, I believe, and also I would argue he came onto the scene with the Central Park wilding case, which turns out it was a total lie. The whole thing was a total lie. This is his infamous advertisement that he took out concerning what was thought to be a group of kids. Turned out it was one bad person that beat and raped a woman. And this is him kind of coming onto the national scene out in New York City. He took out these ads that basically say in hyperbolic terms what that woman was pointing out.
Well, I don't
So
think any of this is new, Ethan. I don't think any of
I
this.
didn't say it was. I didn't say it was. I was just bringing
No,
it
no,
to
I'm not
attention.
saying you
That's
said
all.
it. It's the way she's presenting it, right? I don't
Oh,
think any of
well,
that
sure.
is new. And people, I understand that when the first Agenda 21 came out, I remember that the book not only was immense, it cost 700 and so euros. So no one read it,
Right.
right? I managed to get myself a copy, and of course, I didn't read it all. But all of this is already there, right?
Sure.
And this
I don't. I don't
this is
disagree with that. I was just pointing out your
2014 or
research.
2015. It's all of it. It's not a government. It's a world um, politics.
Federation.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
world
well,
federation.
yeah, whatever you want to call it. This is much
Sure.
older than that. And these people that are on into this, they have no understanding of what several people have researched for 50 years in this regard. They never saw Michael Tsarian. They deny David Icke because he sees reptids. You shouldn't deny anything. You should watch everything, even if you don't like it, because you will learn something, either to avoid it or something to add to what you already know, right? Because these people are beyond belief. You go and watch what exactly happened to Diana, and you see that before she was born, her life was already written. She managed to come out here and there, right? But her life was already written. Everything. There's documents to prove it. It's all been. She was an innocent pawn, all of this, but since the place she was born, the name she was given, to the place she was put to rest, all of that was already prepared. So it's not a matter if you are rich or poor. It's a matter if you are in the plan or not. And obviously, we as citizens of the world are at the base of that pyramid, right? Being manipulated by these individual opinions that have no understanding of the real mechanics of the thing. There is no China, there is no Russia, there is no United States. There is a global plan for all of this. And their plan is so good that even when people diverge by being alert to this or that point, they already have nets prepared to
Doesn't
continue.
matter. Yeah.
It's problem reaction solution. It's
Well,
either we unite all of us and they have nothing on us, because if we unite, we have the army on your side, you have the police on your side. If everybody unites, then they have no power, and the government will even join the people because they are also under that same process, right? But
I would point out too that we kind of touched on this global programming that is instituted as national law and cultural, changes. No, it's national. Excuse me, it's multinational global changes that were put forth behind the scenes that we touched on via prohibition of alcohol and prohibition of hemp. Both had the prohibition of localization of energy resources behind them, or at least with them, right? So, and now another thing going on, I think, with the nuclear relationship with potentially these machines that don't run on energy that we're accustomed to. Like they always talk about how much fuel it would cost for these machines to do X, Y, and Z. It's like they're not even operating on that measurement system, it would appear,
Well,
wherever they may be.
I think the more conventional machines are, and we're given the more conventional explanations. So, one example is a friend of mine used to work at Mount Weather doing contract work during the Obama administration. And he said all those days when you heard Obama going golfing for the weekend, he was actually at Mount Weather.
No shit.
There's hardly any photos of Obama doing any golfing. If you notice from the
What
Trump
was he? Why
administration.
did he go there? They don't. He doesn't know. He can only
Well, again,
speculate.
Mount Weather is the FEMA home base. Like this is the
Sure.
second capital. So when talking about shaping policy, you're not going to do that in Washington D.C. You're going to do that at the shadow government. You're going to be involved at the shadow base of operations because they're the ones who are going to be able to shape all sorts of new policies if anything goes down, or maybe engineer some of those crises. So if he really did want to change policy, he's not going to waste time in Washington D.C. He's going to go out to the West Virginia border and change things from the actual source of it. I think that's the big problem: is where are these sources of power? What are they actually planning? Where are these things taking shape? And it's certainly not at the end of the pipeline in Washington, D.C. It's probably somewhere else where they've already, looked at all the contingency plans. This is why you can have a government run by idiots. They're just the public facing perception of the people who are handing them the memos. So
Right.
it becomes far more likely that there's somebody else in charge when you have a kakistocracy as the public facing sort of persona of that government.
And Ricardo, you mentioned problem reaction solution. Uh, Something else I was going to share, but let's see if I do have it. I think I've shared this word before, but the problem reaction solution, of course, is designed off the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis in one respect. And the idea of nullisis, or as you pointed out, getting together and saying no and not being subject to what like is usually by the elitists not a natural problem reaction solution. It's they brought about the problem for their predicted solution, right? And so when we don't react and we just do the power of a sit-in, essentially, right, is the power of a protest, and not being subject to their reaction-inducing problems is just kind of the analysis. I thought it's a good
Yeah,
idea anyway.
it's just I get I get a bit fed up is probably a too strong a word, but of people complaining constantly, not to the source of the problem, but to the visible side of the problem, as if that would solve anything. It won't solve anything until we are all aware of the source of the problem. We are not directing our critics to the correct side, and it's that living in the shadow that allows them to continue to do this, because they have these shields in front of them that are the national organizations, the government, the police force, the army. All of these visible factors is what receives all the strikes, never the persons that are behind it. For instance, you had in here a guy that went through what, 5 or 4 presidents. What is his name?
Which one?
Kessinger is his
Yeah,
name?
Kissinger. Yeah, he's one of them. But there's so many different people who are just the permanent fixtures inside of the bureaucracy.
Constantly through how many, doesn't matter the party that is there. The guy was there giving orders of what is supposed to be, because apparently he was the spokesman to the would controlling. It's like the Jesuits Pope is the real face of the real control of the church, not the white Pope that we see, right? It's the same thing. This is mirrored everywhere, right?
I would suggest we discussed really what would be a potential solution to a lot of these dynamics the last couple of weeks, with the resource problem being addressed with hemp and cannabis, potentially, if it were. And I think you're totally right, Ricardo. I think sadly so many people are so partisan minded that they're blind to what's really going on. For instance, one of the ways that we're kind of steered and swayed into these dynamics that are useless, right? And I mentioned this before, but Moism, the pursuit of impartiality, is like one of the highest, most simple ways to kind of pursue ascension in your comprehension and being, right? Impartiality is so hard to find nowadays. And so, yeah, one side's blaming the other, and we're not gathering resources together to elevate the group.
Perfect example was that video that you were showing. That's part of the continuity of government program for since the 1980s, right? So what they're trying to roll out under Trump was starting to be planned for back in the 1980s, and they can make a million different mistakes on the way from the 1980s to Donald Trump administration because nobody's paying any attention over there. So there's a much greater degree of leverageability behind the scenes than there ever would be in front of the cameras. So she's ready to blame Trump for it. But I'm like, yeah, I've heard that before. I've heard all of that stuff
Sure. It is
before.
bigger than that. It's bigger than that. I share her Trump blaming just in the current time period. It just seems so many have not necessarily here given so much trust to him as being the anti NWO, if you will, when really he's like the most NWO or among the most NWO that politicians we've had.
Perfect example. Do you know who he supplanted to get his candidacy for third party? It was Pat Buchanan, right? Pat Buchanan was marginalized within his own party, within the Reform Party,
Right.
because Donald Trump, basically did a hit job. And, he had his buddy not Oliver Stone, what's his name? Roger Stone, help him out from the inside to basically destroy any third party efforts within the country. And we can see this again and again and again. What they're going to do is they're going to, put the cloak of genuineness or the cloak of authenticity on, and then everybody's going to sort of buy into it because they know how fake and gay the alternative is. So we're kind of in those cycles of searching for authenticity in all these other places but ourselves. And that I think that authenticity comes down to action. What can you do That's the most authentic position you can have, is what can you do to create the change, as opposed to who you can depend on. I think, if I'm not wrong, the Catholics are still waiting for Prester John to deliver the reinforcements to
The Muslims.
defeat the Muslims, right? So it's
Look, regarding, before I address your question, Portugal has two major parties. Now that the extreme right is rising, and it's the third party now, but for since the revolution, it has two parties: PSD, that is Social Democratic Party, and just the Democratic Party. So one is social and the other isn't.
yeah,
Uh, and so they one wins the elections and maybe wins two times, but then comes the other, and the other wins, and then the other, and then the other, and it's continuous like this. And the thing is, every time they go to power, the first thing they say is, well, everything we said we're going to do, we can't do it because we found out that the last government left the country in shambles, so we can't do it. So nothing ever is done because the excuse is always the same. It's those guys, they didn't know what they were doing. So we are going to spend 4 years to just trying to rebuild this up. And then they lose the elections, and then come the others and say, well, now we can't do anything because they did this mess for us.
they messed it all up.
So and you think about it, Ethan. The way they divide the people starts way before political parties. It starts with everything they offer the public that divides them, because the point here is to divide the people, because there shouldn't be two different ways of knowing how to educate children, because there's a correct way that has so many variants, but it's a correct way,
Right.
right? So when you talk about, when you will listen to a president or prime minister coming and say we are going to implement this and so on, and then we know that nothing of that works, it's on purpose. Because if they actually wanted to do, or could actually do something, they would do it. Because a happy people pays happy taxes, right? And keeps improving the country itself.
To be fair, though, unhappy people still pay the tax.
Yes, but unhappily.
Unhappily.
The more I observe politics, especially presently, the more the following theory actually is not so kooky but valid. Whatever the politician says, the exact opposite is going to unfold. So I think it almost sounds ridiculous, but it tends to happen so often that it's actually valid. I learned a great word the other day. I was listening to Mark Passio interview William Cooper, and William Cooper mentioned henotheism, henotheism, as opposed to monotheism, which is essentially kind of like monotheism, but it's that you choose one god of a pantheon of gods to be your one god or goddess, right? So that often is kind of an actual monotheism that's going on, but it is more henotheism in a sense.
That's the religion of the Greek and the Roman. Every area had a different god of the pantheon as their main one.
Sure.
They
Sure.
were really pushing for Helios and the unconquered sun, Sol Invictus, as the hen for the rest of the pantheon at the rise of Christianity. The problem is they didn't have the same type of communist approach in creating that image. So when they were trying to rally the elites around having this single God, which would be this unconquered sun idea. At the same time, all of the slaves, all of the children, all of the women, all of the people who were not, seen as the power force in that society, they were already converting to Christianity. So there was a major class shift and a class clash where you do see a lot of the, destruction of the temples being an anti-elitist point of view. So they took any weapons they had, which were, like iron bars and rocks, and tried to smash these statues because it was seen as like the people rising up against the upper class, the people who actually had the means to produce these things. And it's that communist revolution idea that I think a lot of people are kind of really inching towards now on both right and the left. They're looking for a leveler movement to sort of take away a lot of the power from the elites, whereas they don't exactly know what they're going to be getting themselves into. And what they need to be thinking about is how can we boost up the people who are the best on our side, go through with their plans on a local level, and then change things from the perspective of, let a million different flowers bloom. From their perspective, there are a bunch of plants that are way too high and that we'll never reach them unless we topple the entire structure, instead of thinking, how can we change this on an individual, localized level so that eventually the accumulated product will lead to a better result than toppling all of the systems that have a lot of functions. You're thinking about producing new things so that you can inject that into a pre-existing system that a lot of people already depend on. So I think the problem is that they're constantly doing this with democracy. You can't really have that change within the democratic structure. I don't think people have really fully grasped that yet. I think a lot of people are done with it. I mean, you could see the massive split happening on the Trump campaign. He's like, if you don't back me up, you're not MAGA. And then, basically everybody's like, okay, I'm not MAGA anymore. I'm America first. But what does that actually entail? What are the changes that they're
MAGA,
actually
America
looking?
first.
Yeah, yeah. So what have they produced? You've got to look at the product instead of the opinion, because the opinion that seems to change daily, but the product, that's not something that's going to change so quickly. So what are the products? And I think a lot of them feel too paralyzed by the, over regulatory state, which is fully understandable. But that's the thing that needs to be challenged. It's the regulatory state that keeps these, million flowers from blooming. And the only way that you can overwhelm the regulatory state is by outproducing them. So that's the real key right there, is they've got to keep chopping flowers. And if there's too many flowers, if there's too many weeds, they can't chop them all. And I don't think people are ready to actually put themselves on the line in that regards to actually challenge the regulatory state that keeps these powers functioning.
And
It
it's not
reminds me
acting.
of. Sorry.
Go on,
Go ahead.
Go on.
No,
No,
please,
please.
please. I was just going to say, it reminds me of the esoteric symbolism of the hammer and sickle flag of the Soviet uh, nation of past, where, like, if you look at that in regards to what do nations harvest and hold? People. And if you, yeah, it's basically like you're playing, like, what's that game in the fairs where the thing pops up and you
Whack-a-mole.
hammer it down? Right, and the sickle would be the other way. You slice people down. And it's just, I don't know how people ever thought of that as being a good industrious symbol. I'm sure, Ricardo, you have something more.
No, that's great. I was just saying that on one way to answer the question you made a few moments ago is that it would be logical that people would aggregate in groups, use collective money to acquire land, start producing their own products and selling them, and thus giving Rome what is Rome, keep themselves independent in their own structure, and they can coordinate their own education, their own culture, whatever. The problem is people don't get along with one another because everybody starts to have envies,
Yeah,
and
sure.
it doesn't work. How many times have groups tried to build communities and there's always problems? And most of the time these communities fail, and that's not the government to blame.
Sure.
Is the fact that people are so divided by all the factors that we've been talking so far. They are so divided that they can't agree with one another. They can't abandon all of those past life idealisms in order to create a collective society. They cannot sacrifice their own will in order for the society to grow, because and that's the problem. It's possible to do in small numbers, but it's almost impossible to have humans co-inhabiting peacefully in a community where there is no leaders, where everybody is the same. People don't manage to live like that.
No. Well, I just wanted to bring up how important it is to kind of control the religious institutions, because in times of crisis, the first place people just flock back to are the religious institutions. So, Father Charles Coughlin, he was a huge radio pastor from the 1930s and 1940s. He was trying to keep America out of World War II. He didn't want to have them go into World. This is why they call him a fascist, right? They call him anti,
Professional fascist.
right, professional fascist. And so, as soon as he started gaining prominence and having a lot more people pay attention to his words than even Roosevelt, the church came down on him and said, "You need to stop all of your political activities immediately." And then, right afterwards, World War II. So, what they have to do is control the institutions that the people flock back to in a crisis, so that essentially you can have that top down control when that is very necessary. And we can also see this with the Greek Revolution in 1821, where the Greek revolutionaries that were liberating Greece from 400 years of Turkish rule since the collapse of Constantinople, they were rebelling against the Turks because the Turks were pressing their children into service. They were kidnapping the kids off the street, putting them in the Ottoman Turkish army. And so all of these different European nations from around Europe, there were people who were so involved with the Iliad, so involved with understanding ancient Greek culture, that they wanted to help them. So they all flocked down there with their ships, with their weapons, with all of this stuff. And the leaders of the Greek Revolution were excommunicated from the Orthodox Christian Church because they were causing a fuss. And you can't cause a fuss. You can't actually fight for your nation. You can't fight for your people. No, no, you get excommunicated. They're excommunicated to this day while still being considered national heroes. And people aren't really putting the pieces together on this too much. Basically, if the institutions that you flock back to in times of crisis aren't on your side, there's no point in flocking back to them. And we could see Candace Owens, we could see Tucker Carlson, we could see all of these people who are going to be called in the future by these churches that they call themselves members of fascists and professional anti-Semites. They're going to be
And
called
adored
out
by others.
and adored by others, right? But the vast majority of the conservative movement listens to Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and all the rest of these programs, but they will be labeled this in the future if they remain within those institutions that they've flocked back to for the same type of thing that they hope to achieve. So it's very important to have that institutional control over the institutions of crisis, because without that, you might have revolutionaries that don't get excommunicated. And that would be a horrible thing for the establishment.
Well, think about the way that they were controlling the population through religion. In this case, let's talk about Christianity. They were controlling people to be the meek of the earth, right? But suddenly comes the Great War. Well, we can't have these people giving the other cheek, right?
Right? We got to shift that message. Got to go back to the Old Testament.
So they changed what was taught in the churches completely. They took the bells out of the churches because this is a drug. People think I'm hallucinating right now. I'm not. Inside of a church, they are built in. I'm not even going where they are built and how, but I'm just saying that there is specific frequencies that are achieved during mass, right? Those frequencies create dependency as you are dependent on cocaine or heroin. It creates the same kind of dependency because it's that sensation of bliss, of touching the divine, that people are always eager. The bell would ring to call people to the church, and the hammer would not hit the anvil anymore. They were flocking to the church. And the bell was that trigger. Well, people are exploring the frequency of the bell and so on. That's all included, but the bell was the trigger for you to get your dose of that drug, right? So they even changed the bells so that people lost that trigger and became more and more aggressive, because the church was literally dominating people to be the meek of the earth, give the other face, be humble, do not fight, right? Because if you don't fight, you obey the powers that be, right? And that was the purpose until that point. But then suddenly you need to people to go out into the fields and kill other people, right? So how do we integrate Christianity into that violence? You can't. So they changed the program completely. And in this, you see that even the church is including in all this plan. Even the church is under some kind of control by the unseen, by these unseen forces that control the whole system.
I would say especially the
And
church.
Yes.
right. Well, and it would seem to me that at best you have one group of extremely fraudulent and abusive people versus another group of fraudulent and abusive people when, say, the United States is fighting the Catholic Church, right? Like who's been more abusive over what time period? Like who? Like, can you choose a side there? To speculate on how they might work together. What if there is historically, the Catholic Church has certified a lot of wars by the West, right, and the United States as being appropriate. So who knows? What if they change their, something happens and they change their presentation?
Well,
I
you
wanted
have
to
to
say
think
too,
about
there are three. Please,
you have to
please go
think
ahead.
about these institutions as set pieces in a play, right? So right now we're seeing sort of the conflict between these two factions, but that could very well be used to create, because again,
Right.
you've got all the Catholics now saying, what's going on, why isn't the Catholic Church supporting us? But in a very, very short amount of time that could all flip over, and then you've got your theocratic kind of regime.
Flip. Yep. I wanted to add that there are three, maybe four, sometimes different types of institutions. There's government, there's corporate, and the head of them all is the religious institutions. And sometimes one might argue there's media institutions. In this day and age, we could just say that they're largely fall into the corporate idea. There's also this sentiment that all of culture and corporation for that matter, but all of culture is downstream of government, and all of government is downstream of religion. And so religion is like at the kind of, the headwaters of our mindset.
Right. And that's the culture that's not supposed to change. You're not supposed to change that. That's supposed to be at the core of who you are. That's what's given to you as a child, and that's what you're supposed to stick with for the rest of your life because you were handed it, and therefore you must carry it. And what I think is happening now is that the distrust of institutions has led us to the point where now we want to go back to something older, something that doesn't change. But what we do see is that people are saying the only reason this changed is because it got corrupted sometime back in the mid 1800s. Is that really the case, or has it always kind of been this way since the very beginning? And I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with that question.
I don't think I can get it in time. But if you could concentrate just the speeches of the guy that is motivating the army in this very bad movie from Nicolas Cage, which is typical of him, doing one good movie and then 10
10 bad ones.
terrible ones. But this is called The Witch or something. I don't remember exactly the name. And I'll try to put it in time, in useful time. So if you just concentrate the speeches of this guy motivating the army, you realize how diabolic these people are and how diabolic was the motivation of these knights in attacking the Moors, right? And the way it was promoted, it's like it's not godly. It's literally there is no devil because it's a recent invention, but It's literally the work of the devil. The way it's structured, it's exactly like that. It's oppressive. It's demoniacal. It's beyond words, right? And those people were so fervorous with religion, and that was their motivation and their catalyst to go forward. It was religion, because they didn't know what they were doing. They were in a completely foreign land with people they have fighting people they have no idea of their culture or who they are, besides what the church tells them.
For a
So,
book that none of them have read.
yeah, exactly. None of they couldn't read.
Right? Shortly after Christianity took over the Eastern Roman Empire, they were making battle songs for the Greeks that was talking about Mother Mary leading them into battle and slaying the enemies. Season of the Witch? Is that the one?
No, it's not a season. Oh, maybe season is the actual name.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can pull this up and see just a part of one of his speeches.
But yeah, the idea of motivating people comes to the very heart of what theology is. Theologia, the idea is the speech. It's part of the motivation of the gods. This is how you invoke. So having that theologia motivates the people as the word is coming through you as you've invoked the gods. That's the force that then is used to motivate the people to action. So that's kind of the difference between religion.
You can keep. I muted it.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna play that. But yeah, I think once people can deconstruct things properly, they can understand that maybe there's a motivating factor that is being unexamined, which is what are the actual effects of the people who have invoked the name of God? What are the actual effects? What are they actually listening to, and who are they actually talking to? And I think a lot of that doesn't get examined as much.
No, well said, Atlas. The
Uh,
logos, the word motivation, usually towards some the benefit of the few, and not for anyone that's inspired by their word.
Right. But I mean, it's like a tool. You were talking about the hammer and the sickle. The reason why they chose the hammer and the sickle because they were seen as these industrial implements. But tools can be misused just as easily.
I can't hear anything.
Terrible.
let's see. He speaks again.
He's showing a
There we are.
oh, there we are. Can you hear us, Ethan?
Oh yeah, I lost you there for a sec.
Yeah, my computer doesn't like to stream video while I forgot about that. Stop sharing.
But yeah, the another thing that gets the soldiers out of the trenches that's very important is the little trinkets
Uh,
and the little medals. This is why they developed the medals, is because
oh
they were
god.
trying to get the boys out of the trenches, and they would do that with these little trinkets that you could put on your uniform that would indicate that you were a good little boy, and you got out of the trench and you got shot for your troubles. And this is how Napoleon would motivate his troops, as he started pinning these fancy medals on their chest if they would do really stupid things for the cause. And you know, whether or not that got them laid, I don't know. Maybe those trinkets do have a magical effect in terms of aphrodisia. But what else do you get for them other than losing a leg or an arm or whatever? What's the purpose of that?
Have you ever seen the Baron of Munchausen?
Ah, yes, that's a great movie. I haven't seen that in years though.
Okay,
It's so
so
confusing and strange.
well, it's typical of him. But there's a scene in that this guy with a French accent that was the leader of the army of the city, uh, and he calls in a soldier that had been doing heroic stuff, like he killed 20 men and released others and so on and so forth, and the guys there all stretched up waiting to get rewarded, and this is just say, okay, just cut off his head. Why are you doing? Well, he's clearly demotivating our troops
Right,
because they can't do what he did, so they all feel useless right now.
right.
We need everybody to do the same thing.
Flatten out all of the warriors, make them standardized, put them all in the same uniforms, and if you stand out, if you're a Pat Tillman, you gotta go.
Look, you remember the story of the Second World War? No, First World War on the trenches, that they allowed people to go from both sides to have a football game.
Have a
You
football
remember?
game in the middle of the war.
Middle of the war. And once they finished the game, and then they went to eat together. Right on the next day, they all refused to fight because they seen who the other people were, and they were not demons or something as they were told. It's just normal people that were there for the same reason they were. They were told to be there.
Right,
Right? There's no politics in their decision. It's just because they were forced to be there and kill the other person. But once you know the person,
right.
right? So they all were sent to home because they refused to fight.
Well, we're seeing this sort of a similar phenomenon now, where they're offering upwards of what, 60, $70,000 induction bonuses into the army right now. They've extended the amount of time you can join. I think they're up to 40 to 42 now. You can be 40. Oh, I guess it dropped out. But yeah, so there's a definite factor of how can you motivate people to go kill other people for covert agendas. And unfortunately, I think that's the common thread through a lot of this stuff, is that you're never actually given the agenda. You're not sure why you're out there killing the people. You can't read the book that they're using to tell you that you need to go out there and actually, kill that dude. But you'll get that medal.
Yes. No. And it's like I was telling Jim the other day, because we were talking about he was talking about a bit about politics, which I'm not very fond of, and I told him he's talking about the towers and so on and so forth. And I was telling him, have you ever watched what is considered to be the worst movie ever made? Oh, well, what movie is that? Well, it's Rambo 3. Oh, no, I haven't seen that movie. You know why it was for almost 20 years consecutively considered the worst movie ever made?
Is that the one with the ninjas and samurai?
No,
No, that was number two.
because it shows the Americans training the Taliban, creating the
Oh.
Taliban to fight, arming the Taliban to fight the Russians that were trying to take over Afghanistan.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
You're
So
not supposed to remember that.
all of that Bin Laden troops and all of those Talibans, they were trained by the American army. They were armed by the American army.
Charlie Wilson's war. Well,
So-
again, they can make those mistakes because we never get the agenda up front. So making those mistakes don't really end up affecting them until much later on, after the retirement parties and after everybody's been given their shiny pieces of metal. That's when it comes back to bite them. And that's okay, because that's somebody else's problem. The world you leave behind, that's somebody else's problem. Remember that, boys and girls.
But they are proud because they all serve their purpose.
Right.
And that's why they're allowed to live. because they serve their purpose, because their lives are much in more danger than ours, not only from fanatics and crazy people from the public, but also from themselves, from those above them. You have to, you can't move too much. You have some freedom, and that's why probably I think that Trump, although a politician or not a politician, whatever you want to call it, it was the only choice from what you had, because he was the one that had the widest road, because it's kind of half crazy.
Right.
We've seen that. I was seeing what the previous guy was doing in relation to vaccines, in relation following that crazy. I was going to swear that the what is his name, the head of the
Anthony
medic,
Fauci.
the Fauci, a guy that killed thousands of peoples purposefully, saying he's going to cure them of AIDS. He infected every single one with AIDS. That's what he did.
Right.
Right. He killed all the test group elements. They all died. Right. And this guy is then awarded. Wow, this guy is good. He killed all those people. Let's put him in the government and let's make him the chief official of of the health system. You think this is isolated? It isn't. Go and see who is the Indian guy, the Egyptian guy that is the leader of the health uh, systems in EU. He is the guy that, knowing, he was informed that the batch of vaccination he was imposing on the government, of the people, was out of date and compromised, and he ordered to give it to the people just the same. Thousands died. So he's removed from his, because the people is against completely, knows who he did it. And what is the award he gets? It's not in prison. He goes to head of the health department of the EU. That's where he went, right? So they chose, they know how to choose these people, right? And there good people in government, is there good people in Congress, there good people in any country's government, or even in the EU assembly. Of course there are good intended people. Can they do anything? Very little.
There's good people in jail too.
Yes.
Lots of good people. Lots of innocent people.
I even heard that every single one is innocent. There's only a few that say that they did something, like step on a
Sure.
spider when they're young or something like that. No, but we are kidding. But there are innocent people unfortunately, the system is not perfect.
Lots, but you see, I think the thing we all miss is that the system, criminals, they have a similar MO. They prey on the people who are weakest.
Yeah.
Right? They prey on the people who are weakest. And we see this happening again and again. If you feel you're unjustly targeted, it's probably because you didn't have a major corporation behind you. Right? The justice is definitely for sale. And if you didn't have one of these major corporate backers behind you, yeah, you're probably not going to win. It's a different form of justice where both the gangs, the mobs, and the government operate in the same fashion in all situations. They go for the weak.
Well, it's the same big corporations behind every single campaign, no matter who is.
Right. Well, the more money you have, the more you can fight back in different ways. You can have various strategies to make the other person's life miserable. And what you'll find in California, for instance, they will pay homeless people to go out there and do the picketing for them. So the homeless people will sometimes pay other homeless people and subcontract down the line to make signs so that they can go picket for bills that nobody even knows anything about. Like right now, they've got in California the Stop Nick Shirley Act, where if you go around to these hostels that are basically defrauding the government and the taxpayer out of millions and millions and millions of dollars a year, you will get fined $200,000 if you point your camera in their direction. Not because what they're doing is legal, but it's now illegal to expose the illegal behavior.
Hmm. What is the highest fine? I remember this from 20 years ago. What is the highest fine a corporation let me ask this properly.
Five.
There is a limit to the amount a day a corporation can be billed as a fine. What is it? I remember at the time was $16,000. I don't know how much it is now.
Let me look it up.
Because the problem is these corporations make so much money, they prefer to pay the fine, right, than to create the infrastructures that would make them legal.
And
Because they would spend
and like
millions
you
building the infrastructures, right, instead of just paying.
bug out. We gave institutions the rights of man in Citizens United, but yet we don't actually restrict or punish or reprimand institutions like we humans, because humans get death penalties. Institutions get arrangements to where they're basically unfazed, as you know, you're pointing out.
Right. So it seems the top one is the Tobacco Master Settlement of 206 billion. Largest single company liability, 61 billion by Deepwater Horizon. Largest banking was JP Morgan Chase, 13 billion for 13 toxic mortgages, 2013. Largest criminal fine, Pfizer, 1.19 billion for 2009 fraudulent drug marketing. And then largest foreign corrupt practices act was Ericsson, 1 billion in 2019 for bribery. Now, all of these fines are bribes paid to regulators and the government. That's the part that they kind of miss out here, is that all of these fines are essentially how the corporations pay off the
Basically,
government as hush money. So if
arbitrage, murderous arbitrage.
there you go, it is parasitic
See
arbitrage.
how much Bayer, the company Bayer, is now suing the companies that produce the coronavirus, because that's one of the biggest process ever existed in terms of money.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they are. Bayer are suing every single company that produced the coronavirus because they didn't receive the royalties, because the RNA that they use was an agricultural RNA created by Bayer.
Oh, here we
They didn't
go.
get their piece. They're mad they didn't get their piece.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Bayer is suing via Monsanto, has sued Moderna, Pfizer, BioNTech, and Johnson & Johnson in U.S. federal courts, alleging their COVID-19 vaccine infringes on a 1989 patent for the virus. Weird. Right. So the claim
Wow.
is that
And you know,
technology.
there's one. I was gonna just say there's one stream of information that supposed that there was a woman who was researching RMNA as her kind of mRNA as her like lifetime pursuit as a scientist, and with her kind of direction, an AI designed ultimately the virus. I've heard that story before too. You can probably pull that up at the same time. They're saying, can they both be true? I don't know. Maybe, I guess, but
Well, that's the
but
problem. Is the biotech industry is so fully in bed with each other and with the government that the
right, like
stories
those,
are there.
those five companies at the beginning of the headline, like holy shit, those are the most corrupt group ever. I don't say that accusationally. I say it historically.
Right. And
But
we just saw that in the largest
yeah,
lawsuits.
but notice this, Ethan, that the patent is from '89, related to stabilizing mRNA, original design for agricultural genetic engineering. But they are not
Spooky
seeking to
ass shit.
halt. They are not seeking to halt the vaccine production. They just
No,
want
no, of
their
course not.
money.
No, yeah, of course, of course. I would expect nothing less. I'm reminded we were talking about war earlier, so I wanted to bring up maybe some reading suggestions. the war prayer is kind of, I don't know, fascinating little piece of work. But also in regards to all these institutions forming together and screwing over everyone, especially the people fighting for them. Again, historically evident is war is a racket by the guy who should be on the dollar bill, Smedley Butler. He basically stopped the coup in the United States, but also his book War is a Racket is amazing, and you could conflate time and space for it to be presently applicable and different place and time. You know what I'm saying? That it would completely be relevant to today.
Well,
But
the
he
problem
essentially realized that he was a slave, essentially, but a high rated one. Sorry, Headless, please.
Right. Well, the problem with Smedley Butler and the reason why hardly anybody knows about him is because he stopped a coup in the United States.
That's because he's great. That's why.
Right. But in essence, if you just continue that trend forward, that's exactly why we don't know the names of the heroes. This is why we get people like Donald Trump, and
Right,
why all the people who are actually, fighting in their own way are
right.
facing the hammer and the sickle, whether they're going to get,
Oh
whack-a-mole
shit.
or chopped off, right? So
Yeah, but we have a new war now. Check how many billions were taken from development of electric cars by the major companies. I think it's about $46 billion were removed from the further development of electric cars. And this will cause a war between these gigantic corporations and governments and those that are dictating the rules of the governments. For instance, the British government promoted a law that says that from 2030 on, only electric cars can circulate in cities. 2035, only electric cars can circulate at all. And the companies now are realizing that there is no market, there is no buyers, that the electric car sale is coming down. Why? Because people are not seeing development of the technology. They're still using the same shitty batteries that they started using in the beginning. And we have solid state batteries, we have salt water batteries, we have hemp batteries, right? That are ready to go and chuck them in the car so that they can do more than 1,000 miles and charge in 15 minutes instead of 6 hours, right? And batteries that don't last 3 years, because we all use batteries. We know how our cell phones, after a few years, the battery is gone. And now they don't even allow us to buy a battery like used to, right? The battery was come off and you buy a new battery and you plug it in. Now it's inside the phone. So you can change it like your computer. Mine still, the battery still comes out.
Right.
Yours, it's inside the computer.
inside,
You cannot do. Once the battery is gone, it's gone.
once the battery's gone, the entire thing goes up in flames. It's an added benefit because you can produce more economic activity. They produce that.
So
I wanted to point out real quick, though, that Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War now, he has fired or forced retirement of over a dozen senior generals and admirals. Key figures included the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, C.Q. Brown, all the rest of these other people. And nobody can connect this to the war in Iran because that would be an unfortunate
a betrayal.
coincidence. This is all just an unfortunate coincidence, right? And none of these guys are talking
Court
because
martial, right?
they know who Smedley Butler is, and they don't want to end up like Smedley Butler. So,
Right.
And so now these governments will have to fight these huge corporations like the Volkswagen Group, like the new group that owns Peugeot, Citroën, Ferrari, Maserati, Alfa Romeo, Fiat. These giants that are saying, oh, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to spend more money developing electric cars. They're going back to thermal engines because the people are not interested in this. It's a niche of the market.
There might be a niche of the market being, given a lot of special treatment now. the Iran conflict in 2026 has significantly affected Tesla, driving up demand for electric vehicles due to soaring gas prices. So this is kind of a bailout for Tesla, right? Great big bailout.
But
Just keep bombing those oil wells.
Tesla is not part of these huge corporations that don't have the money to produce all types of cars, because Tesla only produces electric cars.
Right. Well,
Right.
I mean, this is a great way of bailing out all those people who are loyal to the government now, because you could just drive up those energy prices. And well, I guess this is hurting the AI folks, right? The AI billionaires. They're not getting their low energy prices, which is what they need to build all of these data centers in every backyard around
Yeah,
America.
but even that just managed to be a huge mistake. I don't know if you've seen that they now can create a quantum computer that require the size of a room, right? Because they now developed a ship that can produce all the colors, because what we call electricity and no electricity is actually different colors, right? So the chip has to produce those. We lost Ethan again. Has to produce those colors. So they now produced a chip that can produce all the spectrum colors at the same time. So which means that the quantum computer can now be this size, because it doesn't need to be that enormous, creating a chip for each type of color to send each type of information of yes and no, or one and zeros.
Right.
Right. So all this investment that Tesla made, all this investment that I don't know, AI, something that is behind ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and all these people uh, invested billions in enormous structures that consume enormous amounts of energy. And if someone now grabs this new technology of the quantum chip that can produce all spectrums of color in the emissions, which a quantum computer can now be the size of a desktop, it shows that we are going to be prolonged in low technology, although it seems very high in
Right.
low technology, because the investment is already made. So real evolution only comes when they make money from what they invested now, which could be 10 or 20 years. And this is how we stop science and evolution.
But I mean, on the other end of this equation is now we have a global supply chain that is fragmented, that has been destroyed by the hubris of all of these different warring nations, and so things have to be produced locally if you are going to succeed in a global market. So now stuff like the locally produced quantum computer can change the game in your own backyard instead of worrying about the global supply chain, because you might have the materials secondhand, third hand from a lot of other things to produce something similar in quality to something that is, took multi billions of dollars to produce. For instance, the suicide drones that Iran came out with. Do you know when that first was introduced to the United States Army as a viable alternative to the Patriot missile?
20 years ago?
1996. So they had the designs to build the suicide drones that now Iran is using in 1996, and the U.S. government passed it over because they had a much more expensive Patriot missile design that they would rather go with, as opposed to the suicide drone, which was dirt cheap and highly effective. So now we're paying for that hubris. That's the same sort of situation I see with a lot of technologies. All the stuff that got passed over by the big boys because they wanted to get a little bit higher, profit margin in their arbitrage, is now going to have to be produced locally. Is now going to have to be produced on a much more, granular basis, as opposed to by the big guys because the big guys don't want it. There's barely any profit margin in it for them, and they don't want to produce something cheaper and better. They want to produce something larger and bulkier and worse.
And that they have millions in stock pieces to build it.
And shitification is driving the granularity, which is a good thing, I think. If we actually think about the effects on the market, that's a white pill, I think. But I think this has been a great episode. We've come all the way around into the military-industrial complex zone again. So thank you guys for joining us. This has been a live with me, Ricardo, and Ethan. Tell them where they can find you. What kind of work you got coming up in the future?
So you can find me on X at Ricardo Calvary 1. You can find me on YouTube in my small personal channel, which might have some information of interest. It's History, Myths, and Legends. But my main work is at the Institute for Natural Philosophy channel on YouTube, where you can find the Shaman and the Philosopher, you can find the Roundtable Chronicles, you can find the Sharing Thoughts series. And we also have the Shaman and the Philosopher own channel. Unfortunately, I'm here and I don't know the password, so I'm doing all the streams into the Institute for Natural Philosophy. So that channel is a bit stopped now. We had Universe Unveiled, which the girls did the sweet news today at 11:11. Not with Jacqueline and Sarah, because Sarah couldn't make it, so it was Jacqueline and Jason, or Shaman 711. And we have the new issue of the Farah's magazine available on the Institute for Natural Philosophy.org, where you can see the new issue of the magazine for free. And as for future work, well, I'm going to try and do as best as I can for the time that I still have here. And obviously, my visa will terminate because it's only 3 months. So, and I don't want to go as far as the 3 months because I don't want any problems. I was advised to take at least 2 weeks before, so that I can come back, because I probably have more things to do here in June, and then I hope that I'm going to the convention in October for the Ancient Artifact Preservation Society in way up there in Escanaba, I think.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So Ethan's not here, but you can look up his work on the Occult Research Institute. Just look up occultresearchinstitute.org and you can find all of his writings there. He's done several YouTube interviews. You can find that on his YouTube page. So check those out. And you know where to find me. We're going to be doing some kind of a birthday stream for Nick sometime today. So check that out when that pops up. Keep an eye out. Hit that bell button, hit the like, share this, and we'll see you again next time.